Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimale here in Abuja. Let's begin by letting you know that the organized labor comprising of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, has reiterated its May 31st, 2024 ultimatum to the federal government to meet all of its demands, which includes implementation of a new national minimum wage and reversal of the hike in electricity tariff. It came out with a communique and a statement following an emergency meeting of the National Executive Councils of the NLC and the Trade Union Congress in response to the pressing national issues affecting Nigerian workers. Among the issues discussed include the labor leaders, the persisting non-compliance with the 2019 National Minimum Wage Act by some state government. Of course, we shall be dwelling on one of a major story happening in different parts of Abuja today, and those events focused on the welfare of judges. For about 17 years, they say, there hasn't been any review of judges' salaries. And perhaps one major problem that the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice say it is a problem for judicial reforms in this country. And what can be done? That those who are proposing that there should be a 4-year review of the salaries of judges. But what is the way out? You saw what happened today also in the courtroom with Mr. Nnamdi Kanu and his agitation that it cannot be tried by Nigerian court. We get all of these as insight, or give you perspective and insight on these major issues. Of course, that those who are agitated, that out of the appointments made into the board and the councils of universities in Nigeria, one state has almost 50% or 40-something% of all of the appointment. Why? What happens to federal character issues as established by our Constitution? We shall be dissecting that for you and looking at what the Constitution says. Has the president breached their Constitution? What really happened? Why the lopsided, if there is any, in those appointments? And we shall be dissecting these issues for you tonight. So much to talk about tonight. But first, let me serve you with some of your political roundup stories.
Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court in Abuja has dismissed Nnamdi Kanu's request to restore his revoked bail and transfer him from DSS custody to house arrest or prison. According to the judge, this is necessary because Kanu had previously jumped bail and fled the country, and his sureties have been discharged as they couldn't locate him. Justice Nyako stated that Kanu should appeal to the Court of Appeal, as her court could not grant his request. She also disagreed with Kanu's counsel, who claimed the Supreme Court supported Kanu's bail reinstatement, finding no such statements in the judgment. Former President Goodluck Jonathan has called for a truce in the political crisis in Rivers State, warning that the ongoing conflict could have significant implications for the entire Niger Delta region. Speaking as a special guest at the flag-off ceremony for the construction of the Trans-Calabari Road in Obio-Akpo local government area, former President Jonathan emphasized the crucial role of Rivers State to the nation. He urged Governor Siminalayi Fubara and his predecessor and FCT Minister Nyesom Wike to reconcile for the benefit of the citizens.
In this case of Rivers State, Honorable Minister Nyesom Wike and Governor Sim Fubara must work together for developing the land and the people of Rivers State.
And in Edo State, where Governor Godwin Obaseki says the People's Democratic Party, PDP, will move from house to house to talk to the electorate as a campaign strategy for the September 21st governorship election in the state. The governor was speaking at the party's secretariat in Benin City, the Edo State capital, where he inaugurated the Oredo Local Government Area Campaign Council of the PDP ahead of the September 21st governorship poll. Mr. Obaseki notes that the voter apathy and poor results recorded in the 2023 general elections has to do with Edo youth showing their anger towards the federal government and not to the performance of the ruling PDP in Edo State.
This time around, election is to show the young people that they have hope. That hope is not lost. If they are doing whatever they like in Abuja, in Edo we will do the right thing. We are bringing the right candidates that will sustain what we have done.
The Northwest chapter of the All Progressives Congress has held its inaugural stakeholders meeting in Kaduna State to assess the state of affairs of the party and how to reposition it ahead of the 2027 general election. During the meeting chaired by the coordinator of the Northwest APC Governors Forum and Governor of Kaduna State, Senator Ubasani, the members passed a vote of confidence on President Bola Tinubu, especially on the efforts to end insecurity and development challenges, as well as his support to the people of the Northwest Zone. Some residents of Warri in Delta State today took to the major streets of the city to protest the alleged imposition of unpopular candidates and them ahead of the forthcoming local government election in Warri South Area Council. Supporters of one of the candidates contesting for the election, Mr. Esimaje Awani, staged the protest where they carried various placards demanding their candidate be included in the list of aspirants in the People's Democratic Party in the July 13 local government elections.
Thank you so much, everyone. Our first stop in our conversation tonight will be on the issues of the judiciary, where the Attorney General of the Federation today and the Minister of Justice, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, is lamenting the neglect in the remuneration of judicial officers for about 17 years now. A situation he asserted is antithetical to any meaningful judicial reform. He stated this earlier today during a one-day public hearing bordering on the advancement of the welfare of the judiciary and the need to salvage an impoverished judiciary. Mr. Fagbemi says that there seems to be an urgent need to work, to commence work on the review of the salaries and allowances and fringe benefits of judicial office holders in Nigeria, a bill that has been put before the National Assembly called the Judicial Officers Fringe Benefits and Salaries and Allowance and Related Matter Bill of 2024. Take a listen to the Attorney General.
The federal government reviewed the salaries and allowances of public officers and political office holders on 4 occasions, specifically in 2000, 2005, 2007, and 2011. New regimes of national minimum wage were also put in place within the same period. However, the salaries of judicial officers were only reviewed twice during the same period. The present day but sad reality is that the judiciary has stagnated on the same salary scale for over 16 years. This is totally unacceptable and is quite antithetical to any meaningful judicial reform.
That is the Attorney General of the Federation. In other parts of town today, there is an effort in reviewing the judgment of relating to the 2023 general elections. And so there are experts, law experts, civil society organization, and some judges who are sitting today and looking at the issues that are raised in relation to that election and some of the judgments that have come to it. So let me allow you to listen to some of the organizers and, in fact, some of the heads of courts today at that event.
We know that when the electoral umpire fails, the judiciary is well placed to be able to correct what has failed. And I think it's important that the judiciary continues to play that role to be able to ensure that citizens' confidence in elections, citizens' confidence in democracy remains very much intact. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done going forward.
We have been treated to an unpalatable cocktail of misleadings and conflicting judgments, as well as frivolous interlocutory orders emanating from courts of coordinate jurisdictions, which attempt to make a mockery of our judicial system. This is largely an embarrassment to our jurisprudence, and we will not take it lying low at all. Punitive measures must be taken against such erring judges. Any judicial officer who conducts himself in a manner that is considered unbecoming of a judicial officer will not only be shown the way out, but will equally be made to face the consequences of his actions. There will never be room for any sacred cow in the judiciary. because our image and reputation deserve more crystallization and embellishment than what we are currently getting.
Is it coincidence that on the same day there is advocacy on a monument for judicial officers? So you heard what the CJN is saying, the habits, the conduct of judges. Don't forget what happened on Friday. NJC came down hard on some judges. In fact, they've barred the elevation of 2 of them. What does this mean for our judiciary? Let me allow a former chairman of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission and Professor Chidi Odinkalu joins us virtually. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight. How does this come to you when you heard agitation? In fact, for so long a time, 16 plus years, that the salaries and emoluments of judges or judicial officers have not been reviewed. Is it a sad tale that could have been a major problem that we're seeing in our judiciary?
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Sean. Good evening. I hope you are good to begin with.
Thank you so much. I am.
In this season of eternal hope, I think we need to be asking after one another's well-being. Look, first of all, I think it is a positive thing that the remuneration of judicial officers is being reviewed. But I think it's also important to say a few things beyond that. You can see that the hearing is not just about the remuneration of judges. It is the remuneration in the judiciary. The judiciary, of course, judges work in the judiciary, but the judiciary is more than just judges. It also involves judiciary workers. And in respect of that, you have JUSUN, the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, which brings together all the workers in the judiciary. Now, you can hear from what the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation said, that the last time the salaries of judiciary workers was reviewed, by his own claims, I'm granting him every claim he made, by his own claims, was 2011. The last time the judicial salaries were reviewed was 2008. That's not a lot of difference. That was under the Jonathan Yaradua administration, all right? So what exactly is the justification and what do we hope to achieve? If we grant judges over 800% increase in salaries and do not think we should expedite the review of the salaries of judiciary workers, my sense is if I were a judiciary worker, I'll be very resentful. And there'll be 2 things. It's either I down tools, I'll start collecting bribes extraordinarily. It's one of those 2. And I think that is exactly where we are. And I think we've got to understand that that is the reality today.
So, I mean, for a lot of our viewers who are perhaps not familiar with the happenings in the courtrooms, so it is not only those who are sitting right on the bench that work within the judiciary, of course. Those who are sitting on this other side are called members, lawyers and members of the bar, and those on the other side are members of the bench, of course, those who apply the laws and also those who now give judgments. Now, they work with several other people who are staff within the courts. And these are some of them that Professor Odinkalu is referring to. Those who are not judges, but also work within our courtrooms. They are helping the judges to advance the cause of justice. But then, how bad is the situation in your mind, Prof? If you understand what goes on in other climes, do you think that there has been an impact on the treatment or the welfare of those who work in the judiciary on our justice system?
No, absolutely, yes. I mean, how many times have the Judiciary Staff Union gone on strike just in the past 3 years alone? In some states, courts have been more closed than open as a result of the fact that Judiciary Staff Union personnel who run the courts. Without them, the courts cannot function. Look, so when you go to court, you've got a registry, and the registry has the personnel who run the records, who help with filing. Judges are not going to do filing. They're not going to do service. That's the business of the bailiffs. They're not going to do the documentation. They're not they're not going to process the receipts that prove that you have paid the filing fees and all of that. All of those things precede the performative parts of the judicial function, which is really when you show up in front of a judge and then somebody brings the file and says, case number, this, that, the other one, and calls the parties and verifies that the parties are there. And then the judge will ask a report of service, and the person says service has been done, the parties are all notified. All of that needs to take place before a case can be had. When those things have not been done, you can't have any case. My fear is that judges are so fixated on themselves that they forget that their output is contingent, actually, on the well-being of those personnel. And you know, it's a very Nigerian thing. Big men and big women don't remember that the poor people matter, and that without the poor people, they can actually not enjoy the perquisites of being big. And this is just being replicated, it seems to me, in this whole thing. The dignity of the judicial staff, I've not heard about in all of this. It's about judges and the big men and big women that they supposedly are. And that, I fear, ultimately is going to be counterproductive and will leave us in a situation where the courts may not function because of industrial resentments or a default to large-scale corruption by judicial staff. Subsistence corruption, but corruption nevertheless.
Let me ask you, what should be the standard? Now, we're discussing minimum wage, and there are agitations on the minimum pay that any worker should get in Nigeria. And I'd like to ask you, what should be the standard? You heard what the Attorney General is saying, and you heard what the CJN is saying about the welfare of judges. For a judge to be independent and not look at what those who come before him or her will do to subvert the will of justice, what standards should we be setting to make sure that the judges are above board and such that their welfare is enough to take care of them and they are not begging or running after politicians or running after those with the money bags and those who can buy judgments?
You see, we've ended up in a situation that is untenable, quite honestly. You cannot just single out judges because they are not the only people in the system. By singling out judges, we ensure that this thing will not be sustainable. Now, we pay politicians peanuts and expect them to run trillion-naira budgets, okay? We don't pay police officers at all, and we expect them to protect these judges whom we are now going to be paying squillions. We don't pay judiciary workers, and we expect them to make these judges who are very comfortable function. Look, just as a basic proposition, our Constitution prohibits status discrimination. Status discrimination is treating a judge differently or prioritizing a judge's labor differently from how you prioritize the labor of a worker in the same judicial system who is not a judge. And many of them are lawyers. Many of them are graduates in other fields: accounting, auditing, finance, administration, and law, of course, and you name it. And of course, law enforcement. How do we justify the fact that we are picking? So the president earns peanuts, all right? Governors earn less than peanuts. Senators earn less than peanuts. Are their jobs not as important? Are they not as high up in our priorities, our social priorities? Why do we think that everything has to start from judicial dispute resolution when administrative process is not functioning? Because when the administrative process functions, one, you reduce the load on the judiciary itself. Number two, you reduce the need for judges to be sitting every time, and the caseload they have, therefore, is reduced. Number three, you also make the judicial system more efficient. So administrative justice is important. The political system and its functionality is very critical, but we don't want to prioritize those, nor do we want to prioritize the lower down. We are just picking up judges. And if you ask me, this is settlement. This is politicians settling the people through whom they now control the political system. And they realize that the people no longer matter. Our votes no longer matter. And therefore, they can casualize the people in this conversation. That is what, in my view, is being reflected here. That the legitimacy, the mandate of politicians is increasingly residing in the hands of judiciary or judges, and therefore those are the people whom they are prioritizing. This is judges and politicians involved in a quid pro quo that casualizes the people. We have to be careful about this.
So, I mean, what in terms of payment, in terms of pay structure, how much or what is the standard do you, in your mind, would you suppose that the judiciary should be getting compared to what goes on in other crimes? To make them live above board.
No, I cannot be comparing what goes on in other crimes, surely, because of the nature of the perversions, the perverse incentives that now dominate our judicial system. You heard the Chief Justice of the Federation, the outgoing, he's just served his notice of retirement. And he was talking about, he's confessing that the system is not working. He's confessing by himself that a lot of his peers on the judiciary are destroying the credibility of the system. But under his watch as Chief Justice, the disciplinary system has collapsed. He lacks the authority to discipline anybody, and I will tell you why. He spoke, and indeed, in his own words, he now has casualized the system because he talks about crystallization and embellishment of our reputation. That's what he was saying. How do you embellish judicial reputation? You don't, because the judiciary should conserve its authority and dignity with a lot of rigor and deliberation. We don't need to embellish it. It speaks for itself. But it can no longer do so, and therefore the Chief Justice is using a public forum to invite us to embellish their reputation. Why is he doing so? He has appointed his son a judge. He has appointed his sister-in-law a judge. He is going to Shein to get the auditor from his family to the NJC. Now, with all due respect, say whatever you will, my brother. A Chief Justice whose son is a judge and whose son is not performing will not be disciplined. A Chief Justice whose daughter-in-law is a judge and whose daughter-in-law is not performing will not be disciplined. A President of the Court of Appeal whose daughter has just been moved from Plateau State on a new appointment to the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory will not discipline their daughter. If you cannot discipline your own children because you did not comply with the rules, how are you going to discipline other people's children and husbands and wives? This is the problem.
But where do we go from here, Prof? I mean, we saw what
Let me finish, sir.
Yeah, we saw what...
finish.
All right. Right.
Under this current Chief Justice, the judiciary has destroyed its own credibility. And I will name him. Olukayode Ariwola needs to be held accountable for what is happening under his watch.
Prof, we saw what the NJC did to some judges which petitions are against them. And yes, the elevation have been barred or suspended. But you look at it, where do we go from here? The NJC said they are trying their best. And the Chief Justice of Nigeria says, okay, now, this is what should be, this is the way forward. In your own mind, how do we read the judiciary of corruption, of malfeasance, of any kind of dirty arrangement that will give our society the kind of confidence that it requires in its judiciary?
So let me tell you a story. In 1989, and I'm trying to answer this question, and there are two questions that are posed. In 1989, there was a Justice of Appeal in Port Harcourt. His name was Aloysius Katsina Alu. Late now, may the heavens be kind to his soul. And there was a petition brought against him before what was then known as the Advisory Judicial Committee, AJC, which really played the role then that the NJC plays now. And the NJC actually certified that petition as credible. And you know what they did? They said he was not to be elevated again. He would finish his career in the Court of Appeal. 20 years later, to complete the story, that man who was supposed to finish his career in the Court of Appeal became Chief Justice of Nigeria. These non-elevation things have been done before. They never worked. That is worse than a slap on the wrist, okay? And speaking about a slap on the wrist, second point, one of the so-called disciplinary measures announced by the NJC last Friday was against a judge of the Yobe State High Court who issued a warrant of possession without a judgment, without an underlying judgment. That really is burglary. It is, at the minimum, theft. So a judge decides to issue a warrant to collect somebody else's property with no judgment underlying it. That is a crime. Do you know what the NJC did? They said they were going to write a love letter to this woman to warn her not to do it again. If you did that kind of thing, Shemu, you'll be in jail, either as a pretrial detainee or a convict. A judge does it, and this man who is addressing us this evening, or today, does what? Says they should write to caution the person. Another of the cases they announced was a judge in Delta State, I believe, who wasted 7 years after address without issuing a judgment. They also said, I believe, they were going to issue a warning and he will not be promoted for another 2 years. That is destroying the system of discipline and accountability in the judiciary. You cannot tell me, and you cannot tell any reasonable Nigerian, that a judge who abuses their power for the purpose of stealing other people's property under coloration of the rule of law, manifestly should be written and cautioned. The person does not have any business being a judge. But because this Chief Justice has wasted the authority of the judiciary, he cannot run a disciplinary system that works. That is the problem. So all of those announcements on discipline they made last Friday absolutely make my point that the current Chief Justice lacks the authority to say anything credible on discipline and accountability in the judiciary.
Well, those are deep there, and so much to think in. But thank you so much, Professor Chidi Odinkalo, a former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Thank you so much indeed for your thoughts there.
You're welcome, my brother.
I appreciate it.
Good evening.
We take a break, everyone, but when we return, we shall be dissecting the situation in respect of President Bola Tinubu's appointment of the members of the board of the university's governing council, those who have now said that those appointments are lopsided, unconstitutional. We look at the details of that after now. Join us again, everyone. Thank you so much and welcome back to the program. About 555 persons were appointed to serve as chairmen and members of the governing councils of tertiary institutions in Nigeria. The president, according to the Ministry of Education, in an advertorial signed by the ministry's permanent secretary, Mrs. Didi Esther Wasin-Jack, gave the approval of the pro-chancellors and chairman of the governing council of the universities, polytechnic and colleges of education. But when the appointments came, there are those who looked at it and said, look, this is against the Nigerian constitution. It does not meet the standard as prescribed by the constitution in terms of federal character. What does this mean? There are those who will say, things are not going round. There are issues with this appointment and some other appointment, but this particular one is bad. Let's hear from one of those persons. As Chief Okoye Obono Obla is a former presidential aide and a lawyer. Thank you so much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening.
You were very passionate, and you were talking to me when I spoke with you earlier about what you saw in those appointments, which you think is again the spirit and letters of the chapter 2 of the Constitution and the third schedule of our Constitution. What exactly did you say that was wrong? Did the president breach the Constitution anyway?
Totally. I mean, it's an unmitigated disaster, and I will call it a blatant violation of the principles of federal character as enunciated in the fundamental principles and, the directive principles of state policy, section 14, subsection 3, that the composition of government must reflect
section 13, section 14
must reflect federal character, and so that it will promote national unity and command royalty, so that the government is not hijacked by an ethnic group or a state group or a sectional group. Taking into account that Nigeria is a pluralistic society, and also the fact that we practice federalism. Nigeria is a federation. What is a federation? Different groups coming together to form a union. And so that society must ensure that every group belonging to that society is given a sense of belonging, to reduce the centripetal and centrifugal forces that always pull federal states like Nigeria, India, Ethiopia, the US, Australia, Brazil, and Argentina. These are all federal states. So the constitution of these federal states always provide mechanism to ensure that tensions are reduced, so that to ensure that there's harmony among the different groups that make up the society. So if you appoint 32 members of the governing councils of the various universities, federal polytechnics, and colleges of education from one state where the Minister of Education comes from, 32, and then you give all your states 1, Bayelsa 5, Cross River 6, Niger 5, and then yet there's another state again where a principal officer of the National Assembly comes from. In the South, 40.
That's Akwa Ibom, isn't it?
Yes, 40. Why? Why should that happen in a country where we have a constitution, where we have provisions that the federal character should be respected?
So let's get it clear, and without having to speak in proverbs, because, let's assume that this is a family meeting between all Nigerians, and everyone who is watching here, who is a Nigerian, can understand what we're talking about. Now, out of the over 555
yes,
appointments into the membership, pro-chancellor, chairman, and membership of the board of the governor councils of all the institutions under the federal government, you were saying that Adamawa State and Akwa Ibom State.
Yes, 72. Akwa Ibom 40,
those two states.
Adamawa 32, Lagos and Ogun over 20. Meanwhile, other states like Oyo 1, my state 6. My state is an APC state. The governor is
Cross
APC.
River.
Yes, Cross River State. We have 2 senators. We have 5 members of the House of Representatives, and then 19 members of the State Assembly.
So within the APC, this is tearing the party apart too.
It is.
Because it's a major thing that...
They are not being fair to the governors. The governors are not consulted. If the governors are consulted, then this thing will not happen. The governors know members of the party at the grassroots.
So is this also, because what we are hearing is that some of the governors have said, since the coming of President Bola Tinubu in your party, and this is our talks within your party,
sure,
that most of the appointments suggested by the governors
have been rejected.
For federal appointment have not been attended to.
Exactly.
Is that right?
That is the reason why this is happening, because there's no synergy between the presidency, the party, and the governors. The governors are the leaders of the party at the state level. So the governors know everybody from the ward level, the local government chapter, in the states. They know them. They know those who work for the president.
As a lawyer, is there anything tying the ends, and we're going to the law now, to be able to see whether or not there is a wrongdoing by the president? Yeah. And there is also a connection between the Ministry of Education that is acting on this matter on behalf of the president.
Exactly.
Because it is a prerogative of the Ministry of Education to put up these appointments together, submit it for approval of the president before it's then being announced and being published. So give us an understanding. Is this part of the appointment into the governing council? Is it part of what the section 13, section 14, and the chapter 3, the third schedule, section 8 of the third schedule of the Constitution prescribe?
Yes, it does.
Is it captured? Is it part
if you
of
look
those
at
appointments?
section 8, A, B, C.
Of the third schedule.
Of the third schedule. It says distribution of positions in the armed forces, in the police, in the public service, that there must be the commission, the Federal Character Commission, must work out a formula for distribution of all positions in the public service, in the military, police, and security.
So if you look at section 8, subsection 2, actually, because subsection 8C, 1C says, take such legal measures, including the prosecution of, it talks about prosecution of those matters. But subsection 2 is what is very relevant to what we're talking about, which states that the post mentioned in subparagraph 1A, which talks about it made reference to section 14.3 and 4 of the Constitution, which establishes the principle of federal character. So if you look at it, it goes further to say that shall include those of the permanent secretaries, directors general in extra ministerial departments, and parastatals, directors in ministers and extra ministerial departments, senior military officers, senior diplomatic posts, and managerial cadres in the federal and state parastatals, bodies, agencies, and institutions. I'm not seeing boards of universities specifically.
It will come under parastatals. The universities
are the board of governors, governing council of universities. Are they under?
Yeah, it will come under parastatals. They are parastatals. Because if you look at the meaning of parastatals, it also includes commissions, boards, and agencies, and so forth and so on. It's a broad term to describe some certain arms of the public service. So it is inclusive, because these universities are owned by the federal government, these polytechnics are owned by the federal government, the colleges of education are owned by the federal government.
Would you regard this appointment as political appointments?
They are political appointments. They are also professional appointments, democratic appointments.
So technical expertise and knowledge should, come in
because
play.
If you look at the Establishment Acts, it says so that the members and the chairman should have some experience, some measure of experience.
So do you think that maybe those are the consideration and perhaps this lopsidedness that you're talking about are just accidental?
No. We have, look, Nigerians are well educated. Even sometimes people think that members of the political parties are not educated. You have all manner of professionals. You have academics, lawyers, doctors, journalists, and so forth and so on. So everybody is there. Nigerians are very well educated. So I do not think that there's any state that lacks the manpower to have people in the governing councils of universities.
So if this is subjected to scrutiny judicially,
exactly.
Do you think this may not stand?
Oh, it may not stand. And I don't think it should stand. The president should withdraw this list.
Is it a moral issue, legal issue, or political issue?
It's legal, moral, and political, because members of the party are not happy at all, because some of them have not been treated well.
So there's a disaffection in your party?
There is. I'm telling you, there will soon be an implosion. And because of why? Because members of the party have been neglected. There is no synergy between the party and the presidency.
But those who will say that most of the cabinet members, the opposition are saying that they are more or less political jobs for those. I can tell you that most of the most
of the cabinet members are not PDP, are not APC members. We don't know them. In some of the states, we don't know them. Ask the governors. I have told you that the governors are very close to the grassroots. They know everybody. They know those who contributed, to the party.
Even those who criticize that the cabinet is not quality enough, and they're just majorly political to satisfy political
I know
interests.
what I'm talking about. I know the party very well. I was the co-secretary of the Joint Inter-Party Measure Committee, representing the OCPC in the measure talk. I was a co-secretary. So I know everybody. I have institutional memory of this party from ACN, AMPP, CPC, and then the faction of ABGA and DPP that joined us. Yes, in 2013, when everybody was running away, we were there. to negotiate the formation of this party. So I know everybody. There is mass dissatisfaction with what they are doing.
And you hear what is happening in this SDP about some of the leaders of your party who are already talking to the SDP. There are those who are talking to the PDP. There is a coalition that is coming up, and I'm not sure your party is aware of that tsunami.
Yes, well.
Are you aware?
I'm aware because
the disaffection that you're talking about.
I'm very politically conscious, so know what is happening around my environment. Even in the party, they have violated the party's constitution in so many ways. Otherwise, Ganduje should not be our chairman.
Let's take a break,
Yes.
Mr. Obala. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we will look at this appointment. It's almost a year that President Bola Tinubu has been appointed as, and he swore to uphold the Constitution of Nigeria. If he's in breach of this, and this is taken to the courtroom with anybody who has the boldness to challenge the federal government on this appointment, will it fall apart like a pack of cards? A lawyer and a member of the APC, Mr. Obono Obla, will be speaking to us more after this break, everyone. Join us again. With us. Let's get back to the conversation. Mr. Okoy, Obono Obala is a member of the APC and a lawyer, has been speaking with us here on the program on the appointment of President Bola Tinubu in these. Would you say this is perhaps the only appointment that you think is gone bad in your own view?
There are so many bad appointments, but let me tell you that the Minister of Education should be held responsible solely, because if you look at the establishment acts of the colleges, polytechnics, and universities, there's provision that appointments, the appointees, should be upon recommendation of the minister to the president. So if he had done a good job, all these mistakes wouldn't have been there. Let me give you one instance.
It's possible that the president is not aware.
Well,
is it possible?
Well, I don't know. He is the president. Because he has to take responsibility.
The way government works,
Yes.
that I understand,
Yes.
this kind of appointment goes through the office from whatever minister and parastatal, goes through the office of the SGF
Yes.
through the office, then goes to the president through the office of the chief of staff, and they go through scrutiny, and before the president even sees some of these things. So I imagine that there must be layers upon layers of checks.
But at the end of the day, the bulk stuff at the president's decks. He is the person we elected. He's the commander-in-chief.
You don't imagine that
If
maybe there are
anything goes
reasons why this happened?
Well, maybe, I don't want to speculate. That means maybe the presidency or the office of the president is not working very well.
No, so, again, I like to ask you, the president knew those who work with him, that helped him.
Yes.
Those whom he interfaced with.
If he
those who
consults with the governors.
Those who helped him to get into office.
Yes,
It's not all the governors of the APC that helped him to get into office.
Yes.
Do you think maybe in your mind there are payments and payback in some way that you don't understand?
No, I was a member of one of the campaign structures of the president. I was the secretary of the contact and mobilization of that structure. Was Tinubu, Shetima, independent grassroots campaign.
You thought you were cast away from the Buhari government and the party. I mean, since you were removed, you were taken to court, you were facing a whole lot of stuff.
Yes.
We thought that you were cast away, you never belonged in a lot of those equations.
All those things have been thrown away because it was a blatant lie, a blackmail, because I fought corruption squarely. And unfortunately, those in that government came after me because they wanted me to do their bidding, and I refused.
They allege that 10 million naira fraud.
It's a lie, not blatant lie.
You were removed from the...
I can boast that I am one of the most honest Nigerians, and if I was kept in my office, I would have cleansed this country of corruption. But those very people who masterminded my removal are the most corrupt people.
Who are these people that you're talking about?
Well, we had an attorney general who was not interested in fighting corruption. And he saw me...
Under the Buhari government?
Yes, he wasn't. He wasn't interested.
But it was your office then, because it was your office was... There are a lot of those who think that was unnecessary. There's EFCC, there's ICPC.
Well, no, well...
And you were supposed to recover stuff for the government, isn't it?
My office was supposed to investigate assets. Assets, okay?
In the past government.
Yes, and it was based on a law, the Public Officers Special Provisions Act. That law was the law Buhari used to fight corruption squarely when he was military head of state in between 1983 to 1985. So the law was there. It was never repealed. When all military decrees were repealed, the law was kept there. And that was under that law. Which
but you were thought to have misused your office. You have engaged in corruption. Well, you were taken to court. ICP was prosecuting you. And those were the issues then.
Let me give another day. I will tell you all what transpired. You know, just to get rid of me.
Corrupt people in the Buhari government that fought you.
All of them came to look. If you call me for an interview,
I will bring you back.
I will open the Pandora box.
Please, let's talk
about the money that they recovered from the minister in Jonathan's government, and that was never given to the federal government.
Which minister is it? Which minister is that?
If that day comes, I will mention the minister. They recovered $2 billion, 850 million gold bars, and that money was never declared. And I did investigation, and I knew the people. And I wrote a memo to the president that these are the people.
All right. Yeah. Let's keep that conversation for another day. Just in 10 seconds, because I'm asking, what do you think can be done to remedy this situation in 10 seconds? Disappointment.
Well, the president should cancel this appointment. And then he should also discipline the Minister of Education or remove him. Because he has shown that he's a parochial leader and he shouldn't be in the federal government of Nigeria. The federal government is supposed to serve all Nigerians. And then the person who is also responsible for the appointment of 40 people from the Akwa Ibom State.
All right. Mr. Okoye-Obonobola, it's a pleasure having you today. Nigerians are asking, when will that be? We need to have that conversation.
Is coming.
All right.
On corruption and what happened to me. Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Let's have a special
I'm supposed to be given national honor because I fought corruption squarely.
All right. Yeah. Chief Okoye-Obonobola, a lawyer and a member of the APC. That's our conversation with him, and that's it on the program tonight. Thank you so much, everyone.